So the Warriors were trash. Like, no kidding. The Warriors were trash all year, bro. But that was mostly because of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson getting injured. Klay being out with a torn ACL that he suffered in Game 6 of the 2019 Finals. And then Steph Curry suffering a broken hand, which he was basically out for virtually the whole season before the season was shut down, except for that one game against the Toronto Raptors where he dropped 23 points. Draymond Green basically played like Anthony Bennett, and the rest of the Warriors team were young, drafted players or G League players like Damian Lee, even though Damian Lee had a good year. But the Warriors are looking to come back with a vengeance. More than likely, I do have them as a Western Conference Finals matchup against the LA Lakers. I do think because of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson's ability to shoot and their complex offense, they have enough to beat the LA Clippers. Plus, they faced Tyronn Lue in the playoffs like 3 out of 4 times, so they basically know what Tyronn Lue's going to do. That's why I don't think the Clippers are going to beat the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry to all my Clippers fans, but that's the reality for y'all after blowing a 3-1 lead. But anyways, instead of me trash talking the Clippers as a Laker fan, I'm going to be talking about what the Warriors can do in this short offseason, knowing that they'll be waiting for the 2021 free agency to sign Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, even though I picked this team to be a Western Conference Finals matchup against my team, the LA Lakers, there are going to be some people that disagree, mainly because of the fact that next year it will only be Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, who are both in their 30s, Draymond, who's not getting any younger, and the rest are G League players, which is a valid concern because this Warriors roster, the one in 2019-2020 without Steph and Klay and just Draymond, only won 15 of the 65 games they played, or something along those lines. With the offseason being short as it is, they are probably looking to make some pretty good signings. So I will be talking about some potential free agent signings that this team could make in order to be a threat in the Western Conference again. So number one, I would sign some shooters and solid wing defenders. In the 2015 and 2016 season, they had Harrison Barnes and Andre Iguodala, both who are very good offensively, but they are way better on the defensive side of the ball. And obviously from 2017 to 2019, they had the best or the second best player in the world named Kevin Durant, and then you still had Andre Iguodala, and then I guess you can throw in Sean Livingston because he's kind of a shooting guard slash small forward, even though he's an actual point guard. I only consider Sean Livingston a small forward because of his height and length. And if you look at the 2020 roster, originally they had Glenn Robinson III as their starting small forward, and then they traded him. They also had Alec Burks, who is a 2 guard but can also play the 3 guard. They put him in the Glenn Robinson III trade package to Philadelphia, and then they traded for a guy like Andrew Wiggins, as well as having some G League small forwards like Juan Toscano Anderson and Michael Mulder, 2 of which who are pretty good players from the games I've seen them play. Eric Paschall had a pretty good rookie year, but I do not think that he was that great defensively, and he is very, very streaky offensively. But outside of Paschall and maybe Wiggins, even though I do think he kind of sucks a bit, those other 2 players I mentioned, despite them playing well in the last stretch of the Warriors season, I do believe that they were just there to fill out the roster and fill out the wing depth. And that's no disrespect to Juan Toscano Anderson, who could be their new Sean Livingston, and that's no disrespect to Michael Mulder either. But even still, I would sign some defensive wings as well as shooters around the arc. Some free agency signings that I can see the Warriors pulling off. I can see them re-signing Glenn Robinson III, who was an absolute gem for them before they traded him, and there have been some reports before the season shut down and during his tenure with Philly that he is interested in a Warriors reunion, and he loved the Warriors culture apparently a lot more. He didn't say it directly, but in some of his quotes and some of the articles, both sides were hurt in that trade. They could also make a trade for Nemanja Bjelica, or at least, a sign and trade, because I don't think Andrew Wiggins is going to stay with the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry to all my Andrew Wiggins fans. Not only I'll think he won't stay with Golden State, I do not believe he is in any Warriors long-term plans. So I would make a trade or sign and trade for Bjelica, trade Wiggins to the Sacramento Kings. You get a shooter and a 3-and-D guy, or some other signings you can make. You can make signings for either Otto Porter Jr., Maurice Harkless, Justin Holiday, or Jeremy Grant, who seems to be everybody's new favorite player now based on how he played in the playoffs, based on his 35-point performance against the Lakers. So what all of these guys have in common is that they are all good floor spacers. They can all defend at a high level. Maurice Harkless is probably the worst three-point shooter out of all of them, but he's really not all that bad as people make him out to be. Those guys can all contribute to the Warriors, and they can really help the Warriors win games. And they do need a small forward, because having Wiggins as your small forward, well, he's not a good defender. He is an okay shot creator, but he kind of plays way too much with his mid-range shot. Maybe under Steve Kerr, he can develop a good three-point shot, but as long as Andrew Wiggins does Andrew Wiggins things, I don't think he will do good for the Warriors. I think he'll do more harm. But if they do keep him, I hope he proves me wrong. Again, these are all free agency signing ideas, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did keep Wiggins and ran it back with the roster they have. But if the Warriors' objective is to contend for another title next year, or at least contend in a competitive Western Conference, they have to make some moves, or else this team will be going as far as a Game 7 in the first round for all I know. Another factor I think the Warriors can prove on is their big man depth. Last year, they ran it with Marquise Chris, Omari Spellman, Willie Cauley-Stein, and Kevon Looney, two of them who were traded at the trade deadline. But more recently, they ran it with Marquise Chris and Kevon Looney, both athletic bigs who can defend the paint perimeter. I think Marquise has a bit of a scoring edge on him, but Looney's obviously the better player. They're both on the same tiers as a guy like Montrezl Harrell. Both of them are solid energy players who are very critical to any team. I do believe one of the two is leaving, so here are some good other bigs on the market. Harry Giles is a reliable option. I would recommend going for the Bobby Portis sweepstakes like I did in my Miami Heat video, based on how he played his last couple seasons with Chicago, his half season with the Wizards, and his season with the Knicks. This take may be a bit of a head scratcher for some of y'all, but I do believe this is a pretty ideal signing. Go after a big like Andre Drummond, who can be in the starting lineup. Solid rebounder, and he can focus on post defense, because when you have guys like Klay and Draymond on your team, as well as that ideal small forward like the other ones I mentioned, Andre Drummond can focus on being a paint protector and a solid rebounder, which I believe is key for the Warriors in their chances of contending again. Plus, I would keep Looney over Chris. I would trade Chris for Drummond, because Looney is a better player because of experience, and if Andre Drummond gets in foul trouble, then that's alright, because you have a guy like Kevon Looney who can do half the things that Drummond can do, and except he's a bit better and he's useful off the bench. Other bench pieces I would consider signing if I'm Golden State, it would be Malik Beasley or Garrett Temple, both who are good 3-and-D guys, Davis Bertans or Dario Saric, who were absolute snipers for their respective teams, Anthony Tolliver, who's a good shooter, Corey Brewer is a good backup defender if Klay Thompson gets into foul trouble, or if they need him down the stretch to replace Curry on the defensive end. I didn't bring him up in my Miami Heat video, but I would consider going after Gordon Hayward, a solid bench piece, or even a starting small forward if Steve Kerr wants to start him. If the Warriors are not off to a great start, they can have Hayward create some instant offense for them, which is something the Warriors have always looked for, and he's a good defender. These are just ideas on what I think the Warriors can and should do if they want to stay competitive. Other than that, I don't see any other things the Warriors need to do. If they really want to contend, I don't think it'd be that great of an idea to run it back with the same roster with Andrew Wiggins and some G League players. I could say go for a guy like Trey Burke, but they have Damian Lee, who is a good offensive player, and again, as I said, can be their version of Lou Williams, plus he's Curry's stepbrother. Literally, he's married to one of Curry's sisters. But overall, I think that's really it for the Warriors. And then obviously in 2021, they are in the Giannis sweepstakes along with the Heat and the Mavs as well. These are moves that can really keep the Warriors competitive in a very tight West. I do believe the Clippers are going to run it back though with the same roster they have. In that case, the Warriors might take advantage of that and sneak in some really good signings like GR3, Bielitsa, all those guys. And again, with their bigs, I don't think it's too much of an issue, but they really want to keep one over the other. I would go after, like I said, Bobby Portis, Harry Giles, or if you really want to, go after Andre Drummond. Other than that, I really hope I do see the Warriors at full strength next season. And if they really want to come out with a vengeance, I do believe those are the moves they need to make. This is no insult to the players that made it on the Warriors last year, like Michael Mulder and all those boys, but are they really part of the Warriors' long-term plans? In my opinion, that would be a no. Bob Myers has a trick up his sleeve. After all, he did sign one of the greatest scorers of our generation in Kevin Durant, or at least second greatest scorer depending on where you rank James Harden and LeBron. So I'm pretty invested and interested to see on what Bob Myers and the Warriors organization is going to do for not only this upcoming free agency, but for this upcoming draft as well, as they are considering prospects like James Wiseman, and I think his name is Denny Abdiha, if I pronounce his name correctly. So I'm just going to end it on here. The Warriors are a sleeper team in the Western Conference, and don't be surprised if y'all see them in the conference finals or even the NBA finals next year. Thank y'all for tuning in once again. My Lakers video, I'm postponing that because they already made the trade for Dennis Schroeder. I will be releasing that video at the end of this month. It's going to be titled, Can the Lakers Contend Again? It won't focus on too much offseason signings. Rather, it's going to focus on whether they made the right moves or are they good enough to contend again, which I believe they are. But again, I would look out for Golden State. LA Clippers, well, I don't look to them as too much of a threat now after the Denver Nuggets basically took care of them. But again, thank you guys for watching. I'm X. Deuces.